You have accessed the podcast of OA, located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will. The podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lanterns Myron Rumsey and Bill Giancoli, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome to the podcast of OA. This is episode 100. I'm Bill Giancoli, and I am here with the guardian and guru of the blog of OA and the podcast of OA, and knower of all things green, Myron Rumsey.
Welcome aboard. Great to have everybody joining us for episode 100. And personally, after 5 weeks of pneumonia, I'm just glad to be anywhere right now.
We're just happy you're alive, honestly. Yeah, that's
it was a horrific 5 weeks. But this is a special episode 100. We're doing this not only as a podcast, but a YouTube video, so something a little bit different. We've got a lot to talk about. We've gone for a while because I've been so darn sick, but we've got a lot of stuff.
We have a lot to talk about, and I think it wouldn't hurt to go back and I think we've always kind of glossed over how we actually came to be sitting right here. As you notice, we're actually being live not live, but on video, which people aren't used to. And this is something new we're trying, but it took a long road, and it started off with, I had a online radio station called Get Your Geek On, and through our comic shop, I was able to meet Myron, and I said, Myron, I heard you're doing a blog of OA. How would you like to be on our radio show? And I think you had some apprehension there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if what I was doing would work in an audio format. I had done a couple of episodes of the Raging Bullets podcast with Sean Whalen and his recording partner Jim Segulin. And I really enjoyed the experience, but I wasn't sure if one person talking about Green Lantern would be very interesting if you didn't have a foil to play off of it. And then you came up with the idea right around the time the Green Lantern movie came out of doing a Green Lantern podcast. So it was very serendipitous.
Yeah, and I like to be a foil, if I can be, and I think being a new Green Lantern reader and everything, I think that was great to kind of have that balance. And here we are, and we're 100 episodes in. We've had the opportunity to meet a lot of great people, interact with a lot of great people online. I think we've entertained a lot of people, surprisingly enough.
I hope so. I think my goal was with the blog and now with the podcast was to be good ambassadors for the Green Lantern characters, first and foremost, and then to add to people who are interested in Green Lantern, to add to their fan experience, whether it's by reading an article about characters they didn't know, or reading reviews, or listening to us talk about the episode, or talking about the books. That's been the goal from day one, and I hope we've done that for people. But this has really been a very rewarding experience to talk about where we came from, and later in the show we'll talk a little bit about some of our favorite moments from the last 5 years.
And then we are actually going to do a show with this one. This isn't just 100 episode of us talking about, crying and hugging and memory, all that other stuff.
You should see the outtakes.
Still setting up this rig, really. But let's talk about today. We're going to be talking about Green Lantern number 50, which we got Hal versus Hal, which is going to be kind of exciting. We're going to do Green Lantern Corps Edge of Oblivion number 3. We're going to find out what's going on there, and we're going to see some of the familiar characters. Then we have some emails and a voicemail, which is then leads us to our second half of our show.
We're going to talk a little bit about Green Lantern Rebirth as it applies to the DC Rebirth efforts. That was one of the voicemails we got. And plus, we also have Sinestro number 21 to talk about.
And we're going to bring back a fan favorite from a long, long time ago. Some of the newer listeners probably don't even know what we're talking about. We're going to do a Kilowog challenge, something we haven't done in a long time, and we felt like we maybe have to start bringing back again.
I'm sweating already about that one.
Yeah, I come up with them. Myron has to figure them out. My job is to just laugh. And we're going to
stupid I am at a pinch.
We're going to talk, and we're going to share about some of our most cherished moments here doing the podcast of OA. So I hope you stay tuned for this whole episode.
This is Razor, and you are listening to the blog of OA. You need to keep listening. Otherwise, I will track you down with all of my skill, and you will feel my wrath.
So, Myron, Green Lantern number 50. We were getting all excited seeing how, he was going after sonar. He's kind of battling this whole, I don't know if I can save everybody. He foils Sonar's plan. Sonar kind of goes away. But now we have another Hal, who's the Hal Parallax. And so I'm reading this, and really my question really comes out is, what the hell's going on here?
well, the parallax that we see in Green Lantern number 50 is the convergence version of Hal as parallax. There's stories that took place during this whole event that basically Hal was displaced from the events after Emerald Twilight on another Earth, and he essentially ends up coming to our Earth. At the end of Convergence, he travels back in time with a group of characters, and they change some things that happened during Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that kind of changes the DC timeline a little bit. But that version of Hal is still loose in our reality, and that version of Hal goes forth and finds our version of Hal, and they have this interaction in Green Lantern number 50. And I know Robert Venditti probably played off of this because Green Lantern number 50, what's a Green Lantern number 50 without Parallax in it, right? Every issue 50 we've had since Emerald Dawn has had Parallax in it in some capacity. But I'm not sure how rewarding it was. I mean, when I read it, this was supposed to be the version from 0 Hour timeline, but he had the sharp teeth like the possessed version that we see in Green Lantern Rebirth. So does the whole having the Parallax entity in him, does that still apply to this version of Parallax? I'm assuming it does just because of the way he was drawn. But you combine that with the whole Sonar story, and Hal and Sonar never really met in this entire story. So it's a little... I have to say it's a little unrewarding because here's this monumental issue number, and Sonar doesn't get any interaction whatsoever. Sonar's off the radar, and we're dealing with Parallax. And there were some interesting character moments. I enjoyed the character study, but it wasn't this kind of an event thing, which it kind of was hyped up to be.
Well, I think, again, being a new reader, not always knowing the history, and I think there was a lot of other, side comics where we're, where we were seeing this new Parallax. I think the thing that was, I guess concerns me, and maybe I'm kind of a worrywart here, is that it seems like with all the Green Lantern titles right now, or the majority of them, there's some really universal shifting kind of things that are happening here. Mm-hmm. And if with these universal shifts, how's this going to play out in general in Rebirth with all these things coming together?
Well, we know what we know from the WonderCon announcements that Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz are going to be the Green Lanterns of Earth. They're going to be in one title, and the other title is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Interesting story. That was a book that Ethan Van Sciver pitched to DC, and they kind of said, no, we'll pass. And then this whole Rebirth thing comes out, and they kind of asked him what he wanted to do, and he said, anything Green Lantern. And then, lo and behold, the book that they give him is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. So they must have liked the title more than they let on. But obviously, we're getting the Green Lantern Corps back. Obviously, Hal is going to ditch the duster. He's already ditched the long hair, but he's going to ditch the duster look and go back to a Green Lantern uniform. And there's some, we'll get to talking a little bit about fan reaction to that and my own opinion about it. But that's where things are building to. So we know that from a narrative standpoint, whatever's going to happen in Edge of Oblivion may not be resolved by issue number 6. Issue 6 actually comes out in June. So it comes out when Rebirth has already started. So you're going to have maybe an ending there completely, or maybe that and any loose ends in the Green Lantern book are going to be tied together in the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth number 1. Come up for air after that one.
Yeah, no, that's a. So, okay, so going back to just specifically the 50 issue, all right, so was it just me or was it disappointing? Parallax kind of like, hey, whoa, hold on here. I'm so passionate about this city, but I'll be right back.
Well, and what's really interesting is that there was a character in Convergence called Telos, and there was a 6-issue miniseries on Telos, and the last 2 issues had Parallax in it. And in that story, Parallax is building his own version of Coast City. Okay. So you kind of parse that with what's going on here when he finds the real Coast City, and he's really happy that everybody's still alive. He's happy the city's flourishing. He's just not too terribly happy that Hal's there because he thinks Hal's going to destroy it. Because he's projecting his own weakness onto our version of Hal, and our version of Hal has already gone through that fire and come out the other side. Hal was able to overcome that in the long term. But this version of Parallax, I think he's driven by fear, literally.
Okay,
You know?
so all right, that makes a better explanation than I was like. Okay, Parallax just totally wussed out on this. What I thought was going to be an epic fight, and I thought it was interesting that the gauntlet seems to give Hal a heck of a lot more power.
Sure. Well, and talk about the ending of that issue. Where,
Exactly. What is Hal? What is he now? Like just a big green Jello mold of Hal? Or?
I mean, I think a lot of the online conjecture, and my initial thought was, boy, maybe he's becoming Ion. Maybe he's becoming the living embodiment of Will. And Green Lantern number 51 came out today. We're recording this episode. I don't know if you read it or not. But
I was setting up a blue screen.
Yeah. In issue 51, we kind of see a little bit about what happens. We don't get real resolution, but there's a comment that Hal says, I became Will. He became...
He has kind of a He-Man moment where he's like, I have the will, and he It
reminds me of the moment in Green Lantern First Flight when he goes into the power battery and comes out all Super Saiyan, and goes at it. But in this scenario, he loses himself in that moment. He stops becoming Hal Jordan, which we don't see in Green Lantern number 50.
Right. Okay, so this is going to totally blow my mind. I got to read 51, and then I'll probably text you tonight and go, whoa.
What the heck was that about?
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, so he's not Hal, but he is Hal. So 50, I'll be quite frank, I think, maybe it might be building to another story, but I think I was so prepared for the Parallax, Hal with the Rogue, the Gauntlet.
It was kind of hyped as the, big battle,
It was, and and they do this to you all the time, and I probably should have learned by now. But it was I think it fell flat a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think there's only so many times where you can have this heart to heart with his brother telling him he can't handle everything. And it feels like that's what everybody keeps telling Hal, but it just doesn't seem to ever sink in.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I like the character beats, but that was really about what I got the most out of it.
Okay.
If you're ever in the southern tier of New York and you're looking to satisfy your comic needs, head on over to Heroes Your Mom Threw Out Comic Shop, located at 128 West 14th Street in Elmira. You can also check out their website at heroesyourmomthrewout.com. Stop in and enjoy the most extensive collection of comics in the southern tier of New York. Once again, it's Heroes Your Mom Threw Out Comic Shop in Elmira, New York.
So the next thing I want to talk about is Green Lantern Corps Edge of Oblivion number 3. Ethan Van Sciver's last issue in that series. He's left that to go on and work on all the Rebirth stuff that he's doing. And this is a pretty monumental issue. There's some big things that happen here. Mm-hmm. And then there's some nice character moments specifically for Iolande. Now, myself having been reading Green Lantern for 40 years... that's not dog years.
Yeah.
Real years. It was great to see some more background for Iolande for people who are fairly new to the whole mythos, because a lot of these characters haven't been given a lot of backstory for new readers that came on during the Jeff Johns era. So it was nice to see that moment with Iolande and her father showing her about being a good example for her people. So I really kind of like that part. But then we see some things happen that are kind of catastrophic.
Well, I think there is a lot of catastrophic. And going back to the Iolande, I mean, it almost seemed tacked on a bit. I thought she was with the group. They're still looking at Mogo. That's the light they're going to, right?
Yeah.
And, I felt like that was tagged on. And I'm wondering if it's like part of this rebirth, like you said. Edge of Oblivion is ending kind of like after Rebirth. So there's part of me that wonders if they were like, hey, we got to maybe put a couple pages here and there to kind of maybe tie everything together a little sooner. Not that I minded that. Don't get me wrong. I thought that was a really nice, touching moment, father and daughter, and and having a daughter that, I think that was a really nice moment. I just wondered, will it have legs?
Yeah, I don't know. One of the things I like in particular about this series is that it's very, very much a team book. Mm-hmm. I think there was some criticism of First Army where it was John and his friends. Yeah. And this has become much more of a team book. I think maybe there's a little more emphasis on Guy Gardner if you were trying to weigh it all out.
Right.
But I really think that it was good that they gave some page time to other characters and gave us a little bit more of what the team is like. for these characters, because I think those that survive will be part of this ongoing continuity, and I think that's a good thing. But yeah, it almost felt a little tacked on. I mean, it was nice that Tom Taylor kind of related that to what's going on in reality as they're trying to fly towards Mogo and to go towards the light.
Yeah, right.
that I thought that was kind of a good thing that they showed how it related. They didn't just drop it in there for the sake of filling up a couple pages. So that was nice. The big thing that they took a little bit more and gave us a little more emphasis on the Guy Gardner Kilowog debate. I think it's a great allegory of the whole refugee crisis. I think it really. This is a book that's not just an action adventure sci-fi book with Green Lanterns in it. You can, like any other good science fiction, can kind of relate it to things that are going on in the world around you, and I think that's what makes this story better, at least to me, than Lost Army is, because I feel like it's about something in a way.
No, I think this is head and shoulders above Lost Army, and I think we've talked about that before. I think we're looking at something with a little bit meat on the bone that we didn't have before, but now we're even getting. But again, that kind of gets into there's a huge cataclysmic kind of event going on here, and you wonder what the ramifications and the ripple effects that might have in the DC universe, or are we going to be forgetting about this within a couple months, and just it was just kind of one of those little events.
I think the latter.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I kind of like these. Oris, was it the one? The female, the big female. Who's the
Oris,
guardian?
Yeah.
And there's a sense of like she might be even manipulating. Guy,
you get that sense.
I couldn't. I read that part over and over again, and there was part of me that was like, it almost seemed like after a while, Guy was just repeating what she was saying, almost like a Jedi mind trick, if you will. Like, I need to go get Manriel. You need to go get Manriel. And
this is not the Marniel you're looking for.
Yeah, this is not the Marniel you're looking for. And then we have that surprise with Marniel, where he takes the Green Lantern ring, and. Yeah, he becomes, and you could see the ring is kind of faulting a little bit. So you're wondering, is he trying to do something that maybe he's misunderstood, or is he just really bad and he has bigger plans?
Marniel's not bad; she's just drawn that way.
Yeah,
and you can't not talk about this issue and not mention Aricia and Badge.
Yeah,
they disappear literally into oblivion.
They were on the edge, and now they're in oblivion.
Over.
Yeah,
and the sad thing is we know if you follow anything that's going on online, that death is not permanent, and one of those characters has already been mentioned in being in Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern Corps. So
so we're
well, to me it goes back to, is that rip really a portal to get back home?
And that's what I'm thinking is like they're going to discover, hey, we need to get into the rip, and like everybody's going to return. They're all going to get in the rip, and then we're going to pretend it was just a bad dream, Right, that's really what it's going to come down to. I think, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. I hope it's not that simple.
It sounds like they might have to make it that simple.
It may. We've only got 3 more issues to go,
so
who knows? But Tom Taylor's a very interesting writer. I don't know if you've read any of the Injustice Gods Among Us comics, but he's willing to. When I read that scene, I was like, boy, this guy in the Injustice comic really brutally killed Kyle Rayner. So this guy's not above anything. It wouldn't surprise me to have him kill people off and have it stick. So maybe Badge, has gone to the little squirrel nest.
Yeah,
I don't know.
the roadkill Green Lantern.
That was Chip. He got hit by a.
Was it Chip? Oh,
Chip got hit by Chip got hit by the school bus in Green Lantern Mosaic and died.
You would think the rings would be like, maybe squirrels aren't the greatest of.
It was a macabrely funny issue. Sad at the same time because Chip is a loved character, but he gets killed by a school bus. It just so
we have an understanding they're supposed to get out of the way. All right,
I know. But I'm excited to see where Edge of Oblivion goes. I'm interested in it, but it's hard to almost maintain your excitement if you don't know how this ties into the greater picture. And I guess we just have to look at this as enjoy the ride while we have the ride to ride on.
Yeah, and I think it's continuously building the characters. I mean, like, are we seeing John has kind of really stepped up as the leader? I don't think it's like nobody ordained him, but you can see where he is the real leader, even to step in between Kilowog and Guy.
Right.
And, and I think it almost seems natural, like I didn't question it or anything. And, again, is he going to take a back seat again when Hal comes up after?
I don't think so. I don't think, because Hal went rogue to make it better for the Green Lantern Corps, and I don't think that Hal's going to want to be the face of the Green Lantern Corps just because he's still going to be associated that way.
But is that all going to matter?
Who knows?
The Rebirth. The Rebirth. Sorry. Notice the hand gesture. That's, I believe, sign language for Rebirth.
Is it? Okay, did not know that.
No. And this is why we don't generally do video.
This is why, yeah.
This
is why we don't do video. Yeah, I don't know how much it's going to matter, but yeah, I don't know. I don't expect Hal to be in charge of the Corps. I expect John to be in charge of the Corps because I think people have been wanting that for a while.
Right.
To begin with. And honestly, I think Hal is better as that maverick guy who he's the clutch player, and having him burdened with leadership, I think is harder for that character. For John, it's more natural. And this is going to sound so completely wrong, but if John isn't the leader, what else does he have? He doesn't have a supporting cast. He doesn't have a rogues gallery. John needs the Corps more than Hal needs the Corps. Okay. So, I see that as what's going to happen, and I'm pretty sure that's the way it's going to go. And I think that's a good thing.
No, absolutely.
This is Great Moments in Online Gaming History. The day, March 13th, the year 2008, the game Halo 3. A Slayer match in the pit proved to be the setting for one of the greatest upsets in Halo history. In an open custom game hosted by Love It or Leave It, the heavily favored Chubby Chaser 37, a Brigadier Grade 3 with a skill level of 42, was hounded by the underdog Captain E, a second grade corporal with a skill level of 11 and a measly 22-inch television screen. With the score tied at 24 and only 3 seconds left on the clock, Chubby Chaser 37 closed in on Captain E with an energy sword, only to be given the sack by the spunky Spartan who hurled a plasma grenade at the last second to score a crotch stick on Chubby Chaser 37 to win the match. When asked how he bested such a heavily ranked opponent, Captain E replied simply, he got cocky. This has been Great Moments in Online Gaming History.
So, Bill, we've got 3 emails and a voicemail, which is a record for us, which just goes to show you that when I'm sick and I'm out, I can't do anything for 5 weeks, the email's just going to stack in.
Maybe that's our goal. We just wait for like 6 months, and then we have like things to talk about. Well, and the one thing I've always been amazed at with our 100 episodes is that we reach a lot of people from all over the world, and we've always gotten emails from like Scotland, Russia, just out west, and in local. It just seems like there's always
to me that's been one of the most rewarding things is hearing from people far and wide and getting their take on things. And to me, it's rewarding in knowing that people are listening, and it does add value for them because they care enough to take the time to contact us.
Right, exactly, and I think that's a great thing. So let's get started with the first email, and the first email is from Rob McIntyre, and he's from the UK. So the email reads, Hi, Myron and Bill. First of all, I would like to congratulate you both on a wonderful podcast. I look forward to listening to your show every month. As an aging 54-year-old comic reader, my main focus had mainly been Batman books. However, after hearing Myron on the Raging Bullets in the days before your podcast aired, I decided to pick up a Lantern trade. I started with Rebirth, and I have been hooked on the Lantern books ever since, and I've been buying the monthly books every month. During your last show, you raised some interesting points about comic sales versus film and TV. My wife doesn't share my passion for some would say addiction of reading, collecting comic books, but she does enjoy watching the films and TV shows based on the comic books. I did once try to get her to read a graphic novel, Identity Crisis, to try to pique her interest. Unfortunately, all she had to say about it was Batman was a dick. So in the end, I gave up trying to get her to read comics. On the subject of poor sales, specifically the Sinestro book, I asked my local comic book shop about the local sales in his shop, which he said the main books were fine, but not as good as they used to be. He also added that I was the only one buying the Sinestro book, which I found astounding, as a book of this quality should be a must-read for Lantern fans. Keep up the great work. You make my commute to work a lot easier. Rob McIntyre from the UK. Rob, thank you very much for that email. I'm astounded, too, about the Sinestro book, to be honest with you, because it really is my favorite book, and I'm surprised it's not getting picked up, and I wonder if that's just marketing or just one of those things where it kind of falls under the radar.
Yeah, Cullen Bunn is a terrific writer, and I think he's really nailed Sinestro. As much as Jeff Johns did a wonderful job with taking the Sinestro character and moving him from one point to another and really doing a nice character study, I think Cullen Bunn has taken it to a whole nother level. It's disappointing to see the sales are not there, and it's disappointing to see that he's not really doing any DC work after Rebirth starts. But back to your point about comics and reading, I think a lot of the difficulty is that, when in my generation, Rob and I are about the same age, that comics were very structured in their panel design. So it was very, left to right, top to bottom, and they were square panels, or, there was just a typical design that was there. And it made it kind of easier to read. But nowadays, when artists are really trying to be innovative and creative and come up with different kind of splash panels and different panel designs, that it makes it a little more difficult for somebody to be an entry-level reader and to pick up on it naturally. It isn't as natural. One of the things I think has made it a lot easier is Comixology and the guided view that happens in digital comics, just because it kind of does that part for you and just presents you with it in a chronological way. And sometimes it's nice because it'll show you some graphic detail that may be important to the story that maybe you don't pick up on. And artists have gotten kind of interesting with how they've used their artwork to work in digital. There was a specific panel or two in, I think it was Green Lantern number 49, where they had Sonar, and then they had Hal, and Billy Tan drew one and the other, so that when you transitioned from one to the other, they faded it. So it was like he transformed into Hal. And they used the digital thing with some effects to make it really kind of cool. And I think that makes it easier for people to read. I've actually taken my cell phone and screencast it to my TV set. So then you get the panel on the TV, and my wife and I can actually talk about things together, because she's always been kind of interested in – she likes the character from animation and the movie and wants to know what's going on in the comics. So I'll use that as a way to let her experience the comic, because she doesn't have to struggle with that piece, and that removes that obstacle.
Right. And, and I think it's a very, like you said, Comixology is a very nice, accessible, especially, I think younger kids pick it up and they learn to adapt to how the comic is read. But it is sometimes confusing. You read the wrong bubble and you're like, okay, why did that story go that way? And that's what I've always heard from my wife, who's an avid reader, loves reading, and it just... Then looking at a comic book, though, it's so much going on. It's so much to process that I think it's, especially like you said, nowadays the panels are a lot more creative than just your 9 panels on a page kind of thing.
And I think for younger kids, they're more interested in the animation because it's come alive. And I think DC's animated movies and their TV shows and the cartoons have really kind of filled that gap for people. And I think that's where people get that entry level. Back when we were talking earlier about the Green Lantern movie, I remember when they announced Ryan Reynolds was going to be Green Lantern, there was a lot of backlash by people who didn't read the comics, and their only real exposure was that Justice League animated series. And so they didn't know any Green Lantern but John Stewart. And I think that made it difficult for them because they didn't have that familiarity other than what they saw in the media.
Right. But Rob, thank you very much. That was an excellent email, and we hope to hear more from you. So we have another email. This is from Chris Pinkard, and I'm not sure where Chris is from, but he says, Bill and Myron, I found the podcast of OA a few days ago, and I have been binge listening ever since, starting with episode 90. I am a lifelong comic book fan, but like Bill, I have a young family, and time, as you know, is precious. When my daughter was born 3 years ago, I dropped all my comic books for 2 reasons. I was quickly running out of room in my house that was soon to be filled with baby toys, and I simply did not have the time. A few months ago, I started getting my feet wet with a few titles, and I'm stoked to be reading again. A few of my comics are ending soon, and I'm wanting to turn my focus to Green Lantern, starting with the Rebirth titles. Your podcast has been helpful in helping me catch up, but do you have any suggestions for other resources that would help me get a sense of what has been happening in the last 12 months or so? Especially what's happening with Kyle. I grew up with Kyle as my Green Lantern, and he's my favorite. We have some news. but I am confused about what's happening with the whole White Lantern Omega Men thing. Thanks so much, and may each day be your brightest day. Chris Pinkard. Chris, thank you as well. These are great questions. Yes, having a young family is tough. I've gone mostly digital with my comics just because it's easier to manage. Your house is going to be filled with toys. Get used to stub toes and stepping on Legos.
Better make some of them Green Lantern toys.
Yeah, make them Green Lantern toys. Yeah, it really is. It does get hectic, but I do find those quiet moments when you're putting your daughter to bed or you're putting your young children to bed is a nice moment to just sit back with a digital comic and read. So I've been finding those nice little things, or those escapes to the bathroom that go on for like 45 minutes. Yeah. So now you know.
But, with regard to Kyle and some online resources, I haven't seen a lot of places that really kind of give you the Reader's Digest version of what's been going on. I mean, you could kind of look at Wikipedia maybe a little bit, but I can tell you in a nutshell what's going on in Omega Men. I've been reading it, and I've struggled reading that book. I think it's well written, but I struggle to process some of it. But Kyle became, a White Lantern at one point, and when this story picks up, he was kind of publicly executed, but he really wasn't executed. He was taken hostage by the Omega Men. And just recently, he's kind of emerged from this skirmish. He's got his White Lantern ring back on because he had to surrender it to go into the place where he had to go. I can't remember just now what it's called. And he has his white ring back. He is going to be part of the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book, from what we've heard. So he's not gone. He'll be around. Before that, he was. There was a book called Green Lantern New Guardians, which if you're not aware of that one, that might be one you might want to pick up and trade or try to read digitally. That was Kyle's journey to master all of the emotions in the emotional spectrum to become the White Lantern. It was a good story especially if you're a Kyle fan. So we have one more email. And I have to put on my glasses for this one because I'm old.
You're experienced.
So this email is from Logan, and Logan says, Myron, I just recently discovered your blog and podcast. I wanted to write you and let you know how helpful it is to a new Green Lantern fan. I'm listening to the old podcast, getting caught up on all the happenings with the character. I've been a big Superman and Green Arrow fan for a long time, but have recently started to get into and read more Green Lantern. The only book I own as of now is Secret Origin, which I've really enjoyed. If you could, please suggest some material to read going forward to help me learn more about the character. With your extensive history of fandom, I'm sure you have plenty. Thanks again for the hard work you do with the site and the podcast, and keep up the great work. First of all, welcome aboard. Welcome to the Corps. Where I would go, if you've got the one book you started with, I would stick with the whole Jeff Johns run, primarily because a lot of what happened before that has been shrunk history-wise. And if you start with something like Green Lantern Rebirth, you'll get enough information about kind of what's happened as you read through that whole thing. And I envy you because you're going to get to experience the Sinestro Corps War for the first time, which is one of the best Green Lantern stories of all time, as well as Blackest Night. That Rebirth and Sinestro Corps and Blackest Night are kind of the Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi of the Green Lantern mythology. Mm-hmm. You really can't go wrong with those books. And the Pete Tomasi run on Green Lantern Corps, I thought was also really good. With what's coming up with Rebirth, that's a great jumping on point. So if you're relatively new, I think you'll find it easy to maintain what's going on there because they're going to make it new reader friendly. That's part of the whole point of doing this whole Rebirth thing. But if you want to go back and read stuff, I would go back to the Jeff Johns things. I mean, if you had the money to buy them, the Jeff Johns omnibuses there's 3 volumes. They're like $60 a pop, but they're well over 1,000 pages each. They collect the entire Jeff Johns run in 3 books.
Oh wow! So that's a and if you think about how much you would spend for each of those comics and trades, you're probably going to get it right up there.
Exactly, and he's a young man; he won't get a hernia like I will trying to pick it up.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say his cash. I was like, what?
But like I said, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here. I hope you're finding stuff in those old episodes that help you in that journey. I think in a lot of the episodes we talk a little bit about plot and stuff. We try not to get into all the plot points because we don't want to ruin anybody's reading experience, but hopefully you get from that or from my reviews. If you go back to the blog of OA, the old reviews of issues, I used to do a plot synopsis, and you may find some stuff there that will be of value as well. But thank you for your email, and again, welcome aboard.
Yes, thank you, Logan. So, Myron, we have a voicemail, so we're going to cut right here and have it listen to the voicemail. We'll play that on there for you, and then Myron's going to come back and talk about that voicemail because I think there's a little something in there that might chafe your berries.
All right.
Hey, Myron. Hey, Bill. This is Darren from Ann Arbor. Just wanted to call and give my thoughts on the whole Green Lantern Rebirth thing that was announced. At first, I didn't really know what to think about the Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, Green Lanterns title. I understand that they're trying to give, Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz more face time with the public. And the Hal Jordan and Green Lantern Corps book just kind of came off to me like they're trying to cram so many, lanterns into one book that often when sometimes these things happen, I'm just afraid that some of the characters are going to be a little blurred, and some of the other characters maybe will kind of get lost in the shuffle. But when they announced the Justice League, my first initial knee-jerk reaction was, oh, this will be cool, and I was kind of looking forward to it, and I kind of tweeted out the image put out by DC on my Twitter account at DJM934. But then I started thinking, and I was like, wait a minute, are they just pushing like Hal and the rest of the other lanterns that are established, like they're pushing them off to the side and they're promoting Jessica and Simon? And I started thinking like, well, with the whole Green Lantern Corps movie coming out, and they're not even sure if they're going to include Green Lantern in Justice League 2, and even if they did, I'm wondering if the new Lantern they're going to push is going to be Jessica Cruz, simply because out of all the incarnations of the Justice League, you have, for the most part, it's just been Wonder Woman as the sole female on the team. And I'm wondering if they're pushing Jessica Cruz, so they're going to add another female on there. I mean, I have no problem, with, more females in there. It just kind of seems like, I'm wondering if this is, it just kind of feels like it's coming off like they're forcing this, like they're trying to cram it down our throats. And I get the whole thing, like them being rookies and them trying to figure out things in Sector 2814. But it just seems like this is like really forced, and it seems like really contrived, and I just really have mixed feelings about it. And a lot of people have given like Robert Venditti kind of a bad shake because he had to step into Jeff Johns' role as the writer, and considering the whole thing with the Lost Army with Cullen Bunn and doing that and Sinestro, he was kind of had to write around that. And I think, maybe, now that after these 52 issues will be done and he can get to this new series with Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, I'm hoping that, that he can actually kind of spread his wings a little bit and we'll get those good stories out of him. And if Ethan Van Sciver is endorsing him like he has been, then I'm trying to be optimistic. But anyway, all in all, I'm hopeful, that things will get kind of put into a new direction. And I just want to let you guys know that I appreciate what you guys doing, and keep plugging away. And you have a listener here. I'll see you around.
Okay, so thank you very much for that voicemail. Remember, you can always call us here and leave a voicemail. That's always a great way. We'll put your voice up on our now YouTube / podcast. And Myron, so Rebirth, Rebirth.
Well, there's a lot of my green ring is still green. It turned red during the whole WonderCon thing.
Yeah.
So what Darren is talking about, and if you haven't followed what's going on, the whole Rebirth thing is coming up, and DC is really putting a lot of emphasis on some changes, and they're not taking away any of the Earth Green Lanterns, but they're taking Simon Baz, who came about during the Jeff Johns run, and he's been in Edge of Oblivion. I think he was in Lost Army too, plus he was in Justice League America at one point, and I think he was in a regular Justice League as well. He's going to be assigned to Earth, as he was before, so that's really nothing new. But Jessica Cruz, who has been in really only one story arc in Justice League, she's been in the Darkseid War saga, and she basically became the new Power Ring. Power Ring is the Earth 3 version of the Justice League where they're all evil. That was the crime syndicate. So she is the new Green Lantern of that dimension, and her ring is Volthoom's ring. And that ring functions very differently. And her story's been kind of interesting because the ring isn't fueled so much by will. I mean, it basically degrades her. It's taunting her and telling her she's not worthy and so on. And the whole point of the ring is to kind of...
Just like every bad boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the whole point of the ring is to basically ruin you and make you want to die, essentially. And then it takes over your soul and goes on to the next person. So that story's been kind of interesting. She was actually first debuted in Green Lantern number 20, Jeff Johns' final issue. There's a sequence where Baz is talking to her, and they're kind of almost partnerish. Well, that's what DC's going to do. They're going to be partners, and so the two of them are not only going to be the Green Lantern presence in the Justice League book, they're also getting their own title. So Green Lantern is being renamed Green Lanterns, and the two of them are going to co-star in that book. So you may be saying to yourself, well, where's Hal and John and Guy and Kyle and Sinestro and the Green Lantern Corps? As Darren mentions, they're kind of all being crammed in one book. It's Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. And the online, the reaction is, well, if they're all crammed in this one book, how are they all going to get a fair spotlight? And why are we cramming them all over here? Why not 3 Green Lantern books and spread it out a little bit? Or why not take Jessica Cruz and put her in the Titans? Or Baz in the Titans, or maybe you put Baz as a representative in the Titans, and you have in the Green Lanterns book Jessica Cruz with either Hal or John or Guy as her mentor, and split it up a little bit more. And so there's a lot of angst about this whole thing, and I understand that perspective because I felt that way during that whole announcement. It's like, why are we having these characters kind of crammed down our throats? For this, and diversity is a great thing, but do diversity for the sake of diversity, I'm not such a fan of. So I understand that whole point of it. It feels like we're being force-fed 2 characters, and everybody else is kind of being pushed over here on the side in a different book. The upside is that other book is going to have art by Rafa Sandoval, whose art just showed up in Green Lantern number 51, and he's a fantastic artist, and Ethan Van Sciver. So visually, we've got 2 great things happening there. I think the other thing people were kind of disappointed in is that this is Rebirth. It's a new start, new creative teams, but Robert Venditti is still going to be the writer of the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book. And, Darren is right. It's hard to be the guy that follows the man. And Jeff Johns was the man. And nobody wants to be the guy that follows the man. You want to be the guy that follows the guy that follows the man.
Right.
And so I think Venditti's been put in an unenviable position. And I agree with that, but I think this would have been a chance for DC to say, he got kind of a so-so reception by fans. Let's give him a different book and let someone else write the Green Lantern stuff and really start fresh. I don't know as if that's necessarily the right thing either. Whatever process DC went through, they, I think, took pitches from writers, and whatever they did, Venditti's pitch seemed to be the most interesting. Now, I'm really encouraged by some comments that Ethan has made recently. Ethan mentioned, he really liked talking to Robert Venditti about the direction of the book, and he's excited for it. And if you know anything about Ethan Van Sciver, he's a huge Green Lantern fan. He really wants to see this succeed. He recently made some great comments about his thoughts that the Green Lantern universe has shrunk since the Jeff Johns era, and his goal is to make it so that every character has their own book. That's really what he'd like to see, and we're in rebuilding mode. So, I guess I'm trying to keep an optimistic spin. I haven't decided how I'm going to deal with the Green Lanterns book. Baz, quite frankly, to me, is not a character I'm interested in. So I don't want to necessarily, but the Green Lantern books is going to have, the Green Lanterns book is going to have the Red Lanterns and Larfleeze in it. Do I pick it up for that? And then how do we deal with it on the podcast, and how do we deal with it on the blog where I'm writing reviews? I kind of need to read it in order to be able to do that. So I've made the decision that I'm going to buy Green Lanterns digitally, but the Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns book I'll buy digitally and in paper. So I'm still voting with my wallet. I'm going to give an extra vote over on this side. That's what I'm personally choosing to do. I'm not thrilled by the decisions, to be very frank. I actually was pretty angry with them. You'll see on the blog of OA, there's an article called "Too Much of a Good Thing," where I talk about how do we really need 2 more Green Lanterns from Earth, let alone from North America?
Right.
So we've got let's see, we've got 6 Green Lanterns from Earth. They're all from the same continent. I would much rather have seen, if we wanted to have a female Green Lantern strong character, why not do something with 2/6 or Soranik Natu or Arisia or any of the other strong females? Do they need to be from Earth? Or if we're going to have another Green Lantern from our sector, why not an alien Green Lantern?
Or, from any other continent.
Right.
There are 6 billion people on this Earth.
Jessica Cruz is a Latino American. And Simon Baz, I think he's Lebanese, I think is his nationality.
I couldn't tell.
But he's a Lebanese American. So why not from another country if we're going to go this route?
Right.
I guess I just don't...
Again, I think you and we must have not gotten the email about meeting with DC. So I think I don't think they were like, well, I hope Myron's okay with this.
They didn't ask for my approval.
I know. We got to check our spam folder. Right? No, it's hard to say what they're going to do. I mean, honestly, they're all sitting they're sitting there and they're looking at numbers. They're crunching numbers too. They're thinking about money and they're trying to mix things up. And I understand the Rebirth in general, but I think you're right. Too many of a good thing, and we were just talking about earlier, Iolande of what a great little story that was, and I was almost intrigued to learn more. And it's like, well, now we're going to bring in Jessica Cruz, who again, it's like, okay, I mean, how many Earth Green Lanterns, and I'm surprised nobody else on the all these other aliens are like, hey, I got some other great people on my planet too. You're going to bring another squirrel in the mix.
Well, we do need a new fish.
We do, we muck. Oh, muck. So, yeah, it's tough for me to say. I mean, I'll read them because we're doing this and stuff, but I think I was more happy with kind of like where we were. But if there is this promise of it is kind of a rebuilding that they can then spread out again, or when we hit our pinnacle or our heyday, where there was like 6 books and everything, maybe that'd be good. I'm more disappointed ultimately about the Sinestro. Yeah. I think that's a huge loss.
And basically, the Hal Jordan in the Green Lantern Corps book is going to be the Green Lanterns. Sinestro's plan succeeds, and it's nice they're picking up on that plot thread. First issue, Sinestro Park's War World where Oa used to be, and he basically has won. He's achieved his goal, and it's going to be up to Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps to usurp Sinestro and his corps and take their place as the rightful police force of the universe. Interesting story, I'm sure. I think Robert Venditti's got an idea where he wants to go with it. Obviously, he's pitched it to DC, and they chose it. Ethan Van Sciver's excited for it, and in my mind, and talking to Ethan and listening to his interviews and reading his interviews, he's very passionate about this franchise, just as much as we are as fans, and just as much as you are as fans. If he's excited about it, I'm willing to get on board with it and root for it. The Green Lanterns book, not so much. It's an experiment, and maybe it'll stick, maybe it won't. We'll wait and see. But in the long run, if it gets us more Green Lantern books, I'm on board for that. I just hope we don't lose anything in the way. I think a lot of people were saying we already had 5, now we've got 2 more. When are we going to trim the herd a little bit? And I always get hesitant when it comes to killing off major characters like that. I mean, because, I'm a Hal guy, no surprise to anybody. And I really did not enjoy comics for 10 years. I got out of it because of what happened to my character, my Green Lantern. And I don't want to see anybody go through that. So, if these two characters take off and get popular, it's going to be increasingly difficult for DC to manage 7 Green Lanterns. I mean, you've got your entire Justice League of, unite the 7.
Yeah, no, really.
So, at some point it's going to get, watered down a little bit. And I hate to see anybody, whether they love Jessica Cruz or they love Simon Baz or they're a Hal guy or a Kyle guy or, whoever. I don't want to see them lose their character because every character is somebody's favorite.
I'm a little bit different. I suck it up.
You're like,
suck it up, Buttercup. Well, again, thank you for the voicemails. Thank you for all the emails. You heard, what Myron feels about Rebirth.
I was much more composed than I was when the Green Lantern.
I did. I'm proud of you. Being first YouTube, I think this is good. You kept it clean. But keep the emails coming, keep the voicemails coming, and we're going to now talk about a couple more comics.
This is Giancarlo Volpe, producer of Green Lantern, the animated series, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So the last book we're going to talk about is Sinestro number 21. And, we see some big changes going on in the Sinestro Corps.
A lot of big changes, and I think that's great. First of all, Sinestro he gave it his all. Literally. And it was weird. It was I'm not tired. I gave some of my essence away. You want to hear that from any pro athlete after a game. Yeah. It's I left it all. I left some of my essence out there.
He left it all on the field.
He really did. And so now we're looking at a Sinestro Corps, and we're kind of looking at this as almost like a kinder, more empathetic Sinestro Corps, where fear isn't just the dominance, but it's there to protect. And it was even interesting seeing Kal-El and Diana, Wonder Woman, just kind of having that kind of that wasn't too bad. That was all right.
Maybe the Sinestro guy is not so bad after all.
Yeah, I know. I got a little dill pickle there. So it is kind of funny how they kind of took to the Yellow Ring. Even Adam Teth is great at the end. He's like, hey, we both know that you kind of caused all
this.
If
they knew what I know.
You opened up Pandora's box and then you closed it, and now everybody's like, oh, Sinestro.
I love the one where the little girl hugs our Kilo.
Yeah.
Thank you, Monster Man.
Well, and that's some of the things that we have, some of the questions that came up is are we looking at a more kinder, empathetic Sinestro Corps?
No.
No, okay.
I don't think so.
Done deal.
I think once he gets in charge, we're going to see his true colors come out, and
where the power might not be enough. Well, there's going to be a power struggle when the Green Lanterns come back. But again, how much is this going to carry over into Rebirth, where some of this is coming up?
How much of it is?
Yeah.
Soranik Natu still going to be in charge by the time we get there?
And is Soranik Natu is there a reason why Sinestro chose? He's calculated. So why did he choose his daughter? Right. Because it's in the bloodline. He sees something in her, or he knows that eventually he can kick her out.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. What I'm really looking forward to is if this carries over when Soranik Natu meets up with the Green Lanterns and how that interaction goes.
Right, and she's like, "Well, we just saved her, so what?
What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it? And then we have you see Kilowog, and now are we going to see Kilowog in crossovers? Showing up in the Justice League or the Simon Baz or the New Green Lanterns with Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz, where you have Kilowog. Is he going to be helping out against the Red Lanterns or something or Alar Fleas? He's the Yellow Earth protector. Is that going to carry over?
Kilo. You mean
or Kilo? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm really legitimately intrigued to see what they do with that, because obviously if Sinestro is taken over as the police force of the universe, somebody's got to be assigned to our sector. So, and it's our Kilo.
And it's our Kilo. Yeah. How lucky are we?
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of OA.
The podcast of OA.
All right. So, Myron, one of our fan favorites from a long, long time ago, the Kilowog Challenge.
I was hoping you were going to forget.
Well, yeah. So, so the Kilowog Challenge is we kind of give you a scenario of one thing or another of like what we would like to do, and what you could do if you had this power of this, unlimited power with this. Green ring.
If you were a Green Lantern, how would you
handle this? And and sometimes they're like really easy, and sometimes they're hard. But this one was I tried to come up with a little bit tricky. Okay, so we're on the second floor of an abandoned warehouse. A group of hostages are being held by 10 armed, militarily trained mercenaries, and they all have high-tech gear that includes personal shields. All right. How do you use your ring to solve this issue?
I call Batman. No.
Yeah. Batman, are you listening?
You haven't seen Batman versus Superman yet. But
no, I have not.
That happens. Not with Green Lantern, but Batman does it.
That's how they introduce Green Lantern. Hey, you handle this. Yeah.
You do, yeah. I think my focus would be more on trying to rescue the hostages than taking out the bad guys. Mm-hmm. So I think what I would do is I would take my ring, and I would envelop the building in a shell, airtight, and I'd suck all the air out of it really fast so they would all pass out.
Okay.
Then I would let the air back in, and when they're incapacitated, taken care of.
All right. That was new. I didn't see that coming. Okay, that was very cool. I was going to just blow up the whole building with a gigantic ball that just comes up. Yeah, I figured, like how many? I never really specified, so I'm thinking 4. That's not bad. 10 bad guys for 4 people. We're good.
See, I took the Batman approach. You took the Superman approach.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Great. So if you think you can answer the Kilowog Challenge, please email us or leave a voicemail again.
Or comment on the YouTube video.
Yes, I forgot we can do that now because we're on video.
Aha.
Our cameraman is like, what are you doing? Actually, our cameraman's just a tripod, so. And so again, the Kilowog Challenge is on the second floor of an abandoned warehouse. A group of hostages are being held by 10 armed, militarily trained mercenaries with high-tech gear that includes personal shields. All right, so I should have put something in there, and also respirator masks so they can't have the air sucked out of them like this guy over here. But good thinking, overall.
This is Robert Vendetti, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, that's 100 episodes. We did it. We made it over that hurdle. We can now do whatever we want. I think we get free Frosties at Wendy's. I don't know what it is, but
the world is our oyster.
The world is our oyster, exactly. But we do have some memories, I think, that are really, really good. I think I enjoyed a lot of our interviews, whether it was with Giancarlo Volpe and Jim Krieg. I think that was one of our best interviews because I think we found out a lot of answers about losing the Green Lantern animated series.
And Giancarlo Volpe was the first person to agree to do an interview on our show.
Right.
And for me, that was like, oh, wow. I never thought we'd get any kind of reaction from anybody who creates anything. We'd get that. To me, that was like very rewarding. And he was such a great person. I remember when we interviewed him the first time, we were like, okay, we're going to record for an hour. And we got to the hour, and he kept on talking. And I was like, boy, we could go all night with him.
Yeah, we actually faked falling asleep. We were like, oh, sorry, Juggler, we got to get up tomorrow. He was like, oh, okay, guys, I'll call you tomorrow. He's such a nice guy.
And he is a very nice guy. Interviewing him, and Ethan Van Sciver was great. We got to interview him a couple years ago at a local convention, and it was the 10-year anniversary of Rebirth, and that was our first YouTube video.
That was actually our very first YouTube video.
He didn't realize it'd been 10 years.
And he was great in that he was really fun to interview, and I think that was great. We've done a lot of great things. I think when I think about our memories, I think it hit me that this podcast was actually people were listening to, and there was like actual people who wanted to listen to it, was the Seafoam Lantern incident.
Yes.
Where with Brian DuPont, who's an artist, I believe he's from Illinois, and I offhandedly mentioned something about seafoam being one of the colors of the spectrum.
Yeah, we were talking about how Jeff Johns had used up all the primary colors and what's next. and you said, the seafoam, and then I think I threw in, that's anxiety.
Yeah, that's the power of anxiety.
And it's gone on. And we did burnt sienna at one point. I think that was you were gone for a while. I think it was when your first child was born. You had to take a break. Mm-hmm. And I had Sean Whalen from Raging Bullets fill in for you for a couple of episodes. And we were talking about the whole thing, and he said burnt sienna. In the episode you came back, Brian DuPont he designed the logo for the Seafoam Lanterns and sent us T-shirts.
Right.
Which was really cool. And then when you came back, he did a whole mock cover of a comic book of Sean there holding the two power batteries. He designed the power batteries for both the core, and it said, Bill returns, and it was neat,
And I think that was like when we started open, people are actually listening to what we are saying, and it was just an offhanded comment that we kind of put out there, and I think that was great. And we're going to be flashing the photo of, if you've never seen this, of Myron and I in our Seafoam.
We'll have to put the image up of that cover too.
We'll definitely do that.
One of the things, personally for me, that I loved doing was in the beginning, before you had children and I got old, we did these things, these Green Lantern spotlights. And what we did was we would do a mock interview with a member of the Green Lantern Corps, and Bill would write these really great scripts. I would feed him the historical information about the character. He'd build a script around it. And then his brother, who's an actor out west, would do a voice recording of his lines, and we would do recordings of our lines, and then cut them together as a mock interview. And there was this long-running thing where, and this wasn't built we you really legitimately hated Guy Gardner as a character. Mm-hmm. And so we got to the point of doing the Guy Gardner thing. I don't remember which one of us suggested it, but one of us said, wouldn't it be great if we interviewed Guy Gardner and he really busted your chops?
Well, I kind of wrote that because I knew my brother would be doing the voiceover, and if there was ever going to be somebody who busts my chops, it would be my brother / Guy Gardner.
So we did this whole. I think it was Podcast of OA episode either 14 or 17, one of the two. and so we had this interview where we're supposed to be interviewing Izamat Cole, and he can't be there. And all of a sudden, we do the mock Skype signal as if Guy Gardner's calling us, and he proceeds to rip you a new one, and we had to bleep things out. I found it hysterically funny.
Yeah, you did. I think that's where we've had a lot of fun with these, and I think we've had a lot of people to thank, like a Brian DuPont, and like all our guests that we've had, even Adam Cooter, Giancarlo Volpe, Aaron Cooter, I'm sorry, and and I think anybody who's ever really written in or called in, it's always just nice to know that you're out there and you're listening. It humbles us very much. And I think we're going to try to see what we can do to expand and see, what else is, what else can we do with this Green Lantern universe, which it seems like, there'll be a rebirth soon. Maybe we'll do a rebirth.
Maybe
we'll turn the tables on DC. That's what we'll do. But and we also have to thank the wonderful people at the Heights Theater in Elmira Heights. They're letting us actually film here. So that was like one of the nice things. So if you ever get a chance, you want to see a great movie in an old classic theater, this is it.
Also, a big shout out to Jared Iosa at Heroes Your Mom Through Comics, because he was the person who introduced us, and this show would not be here if not for him. And he's always been very supportive.
Absolutely.
Back when we did the T-shirts, the Keep Calm and Charge Your Ring T-shirts and stuff like that, he paid for all those out of his store's money.
Yeah,
just to be supportive of us, which is fantastic. And I can't thank him enough.
Thank you all very much for listening. So now we move on to 101 episode. Not right now, but a
couple weeks.
Yeah. But again, thank you very much for listening.
Very much so. I really just want to take a moment to thank everybody for listening to the show, reading the blog. When I started the blog, I didn't know if anybody was going to read it, but I felt like I needed to give back to the franchise, because I literally wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the character. And so for me, it was a very personal thing to want to give back to the franchise that meant so much to me. And people responded, and I'm very grateful for that. So again, in closing, thank everybody for listening to the episodes of the Podcast of OA and reading the blog of OA and making us a part of your fan experience. We're very grateful for that. So until next time, keep that ring charged and make every day your brightest day.
Have a good night.
The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6969. 888-848-6362. And Skype users can leave a voicemail on the show's account, Blog of Oa. Emails can be sent to greenlantern@stny.rr.com. And you can also find the Blog of Oa and the Podcast of Oa on Facebook and Google+. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of Oa and the Podcast of Oa are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.